So, the topic of the conversation today was going to be kind of around creativity and around dreams, which are, you know, two things that I'm very, very fascinated by. Cordell, I know you do work specifically around dreams, and I'm super, super interested in finding out more about your work. Just off the what if I'm totally new to what you do. Why don't you give me the Cordell version of the work that you dive into with dreams and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, thank you. Dreams are such an interesting topic of discussion because everyone dreams. Everyone dreams every single night, 2 hours, but most of us don't know what to do with those experiences. Most of us have not been brought up in households or cultures where we really are taught to honor these 2 hours of experiences that we have every single night. And so a lot of my work is helping people to connect to these altered states of consciousness that we go to regularly and every night, and how to utilize these experiences for personal growth, development, facing our fears, and ultimately to inform our lives. And so for anyone starting out in this practice, the first question is, why do we want to know about our dreams? Why do we want to have a connection to our dreams? Why do we want to recall and experience and play with these 2 hours every night, or what equates to about 6 years of our life? And I think that's the big call to for many people is, if I'm going to be dreaming 6 hours for the rest 6 years of my life, what can I do with this? How do I bring some conscious awareness to what is otherwise seen as an unconscious aspect of our lives? And I think that's the big goal. That's things, Greg and I talk about a lot, which is, how do we become more conscious? How do we bring conscious awareness to all aspects of our life? And dreams are just a fun, playful, explorative, contemplative way to do that.
And so, when you say adding an element of consciousness to dreams, oftentimes in dreams, I've found that there's layers of how you experience them. You can either be a passive observer, where you're sort of watching these events unfold. There's other times where you feel like you're at the epicenter of a conscious viewpoint, as in like the same way that you and I are having a conversation. I'm experiencing me talking to you, and I can actually be a person in a dream deciding to do things. And there are times where there's a third person, first person. What do you mean? And also there are times where there's an element of lucidity, as in I'm actually consciously choosing to behave a certain way in dreams. When you talk about adding an element of consciousness to dreams, what's your angle on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a number of different ways to look at this. I mean, the first simplest way is just to recall our dreams. And most people can learn to recall their dreams every night pretty quickly. It's just like anything. How do you practice a few exercises so that every morning you're waking up going, wow, what was that? Those were some incredible experiences. And that brings a little bit of awareness to these experiences, all the way to that other end of the spectrum, which you were talking about, which is lucid dreaming, which is one of the things most people want to get into. Lucid dreaming is really becoming aware that we're dreaming within a dream. And that's like super consciousness. That's going into a state, into a realm where you are fully aware of what's going on around you. You can carry out intentions and influence in that space. And truly, that's where you're in a limitless space. The only limits are your imagination. And so what do you want to do? If you had the genie at your disposal, okay, I can do anything here. Do I want to fly? Do I want to frolic? Do I want to have super conscious experiences? And that practice, just by learning how to become super conscious again in this otherwise unconscious state, has massive ripple effects for our day-to-day life. When you bring full awareness, super lucidity to experience, most people describe lucid dreaming experience as some of the most profound experiences of their lives. And just that act of bringing that awareness has ripple effects into how we bring real conscious awareness into our everyday life and activities.
That's awesome. And I want to dive into this because there's so much about dreams. I want to talk about what dreams are in terms of both your cosmological understandings of like, what is that other realm of consciousness? Is it just a chemically produced thing within our brains? Is it another astral dimension of existence that we can access through our consciousness? Like what dreams actually are. I want to talk about that. There's a lot that I want to talk about, but before we move on, I kind of want to, just circle back to Greg here for a second, because Greg, we've talked about true weird dreams that we've had a lot. I actually lived with Greg for a while in Banff, Alberta. And I know that dreaming is a really important thing to you. You've had dreams that have guided you to different places. And, I think what's interesting is like dreams are this unconscious or subconscious expression of the capacity we have for creativity, right? It's sort of an unbridled, uninhibited form of like you're creating these intense, intricate scenes. You're literally forming and fabricating reality with your consciousness itself or your subconscious itself. And creativity is a huge component of the work that you do, Greg. And I'd love to talk about the work that you're doing right now. You just started a new program called the Awakened Creative. You're doing some incredibly neat work in many different angles. You're also one of the most talented musicians that I've ever met in my entire friggin' life. So just, if someone was like, what is Greg all about? What would you tell them?
Greg is certainly about expanding consciousness as well in some pretty out there ways. I think our human expression is belittled these days and is compartmentalized and is packaged and commodified. And so we expect things to go a certain way. We expect things to look a certain way. And then we question why we're feeling the way we do and if we should be feeling it. So there's this lack of validation on a day-to-day basis. Should I be human if I'm thinking these inhuman thoughts or having these inhuman dreams? Or, I'm finding myself in these pits of despair, these emotional rainbows that happen where the next day I, question the experiences and the consciousness that is the human experience. And I think slowing down in 2020 is getting a lot of people to do these deep dives into their consciousness. Flashback to 10 years ago, I was in Cambodia, and that's where I was prompted to start investigating and studying creative art therapy and doing deep dives into where imagination comes from and where human expression comes from. And to understand that a lot of the time growing up, we ask permission to express ourselves. We ask permission to authenticate ourselves, to ask questions, and we're either told we're wrong or we're right. And I think dreams and creativity give us that even playing field of there is no wrong or right, there just is. And so it's this middle path that allows for a lot of acceptance, cathartic release, and a lot of consciousness to expand in all directions. And if we consider, lucid dreaming having full control in our sleeping state, then creativity is lucid living, is lucidity in the waking state. And I love to explore that with people, because sometimes they forget that you don't need to be you don't need to find your niche or be told you're an artist, which is nearly impossible to become these days. Not impossible, but difficult to reach a state of living off your own art. And so I like to give people that full permission to do deep dives and investigate their own consciousness through visual art, through poetry, through dance, through any kind of form of human expression.
So what I'm hearing is like creativity is something that's been so commodified, and the expectation is that anything that you produce has to be produced for the sake of earning something or contributing to some sort of capitalist structure. And so because of that, the very nature of creativity itself has been exclusively used for this commodification, and people aren't creating because they don't think that they can make a living out of it unless they can say, well, I'm a professional artist or I'm doing this. Like there's an inhibition of people's natural creative senses because they can't make a vocation out of it or an occupation out of it. Is that kind of what you were getting at a little bit?
Yeah, it's definitely a part of it. I think that when you do start to attach monetary value to something, it is taking away a bit of its essence, and it's kind of falling back on yeah, capitalism, industrialization, corporatization, all these ideas that, or these notions rather, that confine rather than make boundless or limitless.
So you're helping people reconnect to that more infinite sense of creativity, and like you said, moving them towards this idea of lucid living in the same way that, so the overlap that I'm seeing here is you're focusing on creativity and deliberation and being intentional in the waking life. And Cordell, you're experiencing that same deliberation and that consciousness in the dreaming life, and how it translates to the waking life as well. That's the overlap I'm seeing anyway.
Yeah, and I think Greg makes a really good point there. A lot of the practices in the nocturnal, these nighttime practices, are just a way to playfully go into this virtual reality sphere, these dreams, to get lucid, to do this, practice these creative expressions in a safe container. And the whole act is really, lucid experiences are incredible. They're exhilarating, they're fun, but ultimately it's to get to Greg's point, which is, how do we live lucidly? How do we step into our creatorship, being full creator in a lucid dream, expanding your mind and imagination to do whatever you can? That's fantastic. How does that equate to bringing that conscious awareness to any moment, any dream or nightmare that we find ourselves in during the waking day, where we can remind ourselves, hey, as much as this is overwhelming, as much as this might be challenging, remembering I can be lucid here, I can step into my creatorship. And I think that's what we want in the world. I think we want the Gregs and the Anthonys and the Cordells and everyone we know to be into their full creatorship, stepping into that full potential.
That's a lot of why I do the work I do, is just to see people realize their highest potential in terms of just problem solving, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be this internal dialogue or narrative they have within themselves, whether it be a creative or emotional block they have that they can't figure out. Dreaming and giving permission to, I have this one exercise, draw your soul. How many people have been asked to draw their soul? This formless, timeless, essenceless thing that is our actual core being. And when we do that, we start to find a sense of belonging. People who are really stuck or feeling lost or unsure about where they belong in this mad world, when they get comfortable with their imagination and their dreams, they start to embody their core values and essence, and then start to attract more of the like. And it's really beautiful, because I think the more we listen to our dreams and the more we exercise our creativity, the more we heighten our intuition, and then the momentum starts, and then some real magic starts to produce.
Cordell, there was one thing that you said about dreams. You called it a virtual reality space. And I thought that was really interesting, because I want to talk about what you guys think dreams actually are, in terms of, and again, like whether that's a phenomenon that happens within the confines of our own consciousness, if it's an actual place, an actual plane of existence. Have you guys ever read any books by a guy named Frederick Dodson?
No.
You got us there, Anthony. I'm surprised.
So Frederick Dodson is he calls himself a success coach and consciousness researcher, and he writes some of the coolest books that I've ever talked about. And one quote that he has is, he says, one of the biggest faults in a speech that I hear people say is when they're referring to their dreams, they say it's just a dream and that there's no solid reality to it. And he kind of explains that in his cosmology, that dreams are this plane of existence where the density of existence is a lot lower. So the translation from thought and intention and consciousness to conscious experience is a lot faster. So in our life, we have to think of something, we have an idea, and then we act in the material world, and we interact, and the actual time lag between thought, intention, action, and manifestation of this conscious intention is a lot more drawn out. Whereas in the dream realm, it's more of an astral plane of existence where there is no time lag, or there's a minimal time lag between your intention and what happens outside of you. So your consciousness is instantly creative, as opposed to in waking life, your intention and your consciousness is still creative and it's still powerful, but there's a time lag and there's like an action oriented element that usually needs to happen. There's a little more physical participation that needs to happen in order for things to come into existence. But in his cosmology, dreams are still this sort of etheric plane that is connected to consciousness. He still refers to the waking life in the material world as a form of a dream plane that is being created through consciousness, but it's a more dense plane of existence. So I just want to get your take on that. I think that's like one of the coolest cosmologies. It made the most sense to me based on my own spiritual experiences, my own understanding of cosmology and how I view and experience reality. But I'd love to get your take on it.
Okay, I can start there. I'm sure Greg would have lot to add here as well. You know, there's a couple of things you said that are really interesting there. You know, oftentimes we are told it's just a dream. And, you know, when children wake up from a nightmare, oftentimes one of the greatest disservices that parents can do is just say, it's just a dream. It's okay. It's just a dream. There's a lot to unpack there, because what happens if we say that to a child, or if we say that to anyone? That was just a dream. Don't worry, it's not real. It's just a dream. Well, you're doing a disservice to that person's felt emotional experience. A child who wakes up from a nightmare is panicking. Is that emotion? Not real? No, they're in fear. They're in anxiety, whatever that is, and saying it's just a dream doesn't, you know, hold space for what they truly feel, what's truly happened to them. And so the subtlety that you're talking about between our waking, real life, material world that happens here and that ethereal space of dream time, yeah, there's differences, but ultimately it all comes back to, you know, our emotions, what's happening around us, what is that trigger in us, and in the end, that spectrum of feeling, that spectrum of emotion we have is everything we have here in life. This is, you know, feeling is the full capacity for us to experience life. It's not thinking. We can think about anything. But when we think and feel what's going on, then we're truly living into our full experience. And so, yeah, they're two sides of the same coin. But ultimately, whether, you know, I go out into the street now and have a relationship with someone, and good or bad, that stirs up emotions in me. When I have that at night, whether it's Freddy Krueger chasing me in a dream or a beautiful dream of flying, it has an impact on our emotions. And so, does it really matter? It doesn't. It just, these are two different sides of the coin, two different types of experiences that continuously expand that emotional bandwidth. And I think that's really important. I think all of that is real. All of that should be accounted for. And one last thing, just to say that we live in the Western world here in a very, they call monophasic society. Monophasic means we put all of our weight on a wake-centric, conscious way of being. You know, scientific rationality, truth is proof, all of this. And so we're very focused on what happens during the day. Whereas the vast history of humanity, and still to date, 90% of the 4,000 cultures worldwide are polyphasic. They honor any form of knowledge or experience had in sleep, wake, trance, altered states of consciousness. All of it can inform our lives and how we live together. And so I think it's really important to honor, whether it's purely physically material or ethereal. It's all part of the full access of what we get as a human being.
Man, that's so cool. I love the idea of just honoring and celebrating the different levels of consciousness. And, you know, it's not just being awake. It's not just sleeping. You named a couple of there, and it reminds me of, you know, out of body experiences. And before I go into reflecting on what you just said about feeling and the spectrum of emotion, I started to study craniosacral therapy, which is a form of light touch massage therapy that works with the cerebral spinal fluid that comes out of the dural tube and transports some pretty vital fluids in the body. And I remember being on the table being practiced on, and this was in the last year, so maybe September last year. And I left my body while my head was being cradled. And I remember looking above my body and just seeing my body there and checking on my body too, just being like, yeah, looks okay, looks good. All right. No expectations here. Like, I just remember being in this expectationless, I can't say timeless because it's pretty linear, I suppose, consciousness just floating above my body. And then when I came back, I felt like I had lost it for a second. But then walking out of the studio and remembering, oh, okay, yeah, I did leave my body. I'm having these flashbacks, these images. And it just reminds me of how the mind and creativity, or more or less relaxation, being okay with just letting go of rationalism, intellectualism, and just feeling into it, like a deep sensate feeling, letting your emotions merge into the body, and having these sensate experiences become multidimensional. And it's really, really cool because, you know, you can only share so much with certain people before you're a little scared, you scare them off. And I think it's a testament to showing how comfortable people are with the unknown. And when it comes to, you know, doing deep dives into consciousness, most people are quite hesitant to do so. Where on the other side of their fears is the greatest joy and success they've ever come across. So I'm curious about where this hesitation with that is just so enlightening and so beautiful and so expansive, why there is this hesitation. And if you guys have had conversations with people about this, you know, where that comes from, because yeah, fear of the unknown, you know, I'm scared of murky water. I don't really like what's going on underneath there. I don't know what's going to grab my feet, but often it's just, you know, harmless seaweed. And I'm just trying to think of if you guys have had experiences with in the invitation into lucid dreaming, the invitation into doing deep dives in consciousness through creativity, what that has been like for you. Because I can share a couple, but if you guys have any.
I can, you know, in terms of the hesitation piece, I can only speak from personal experience, where a lot of my own reluctance to exploring different realms of consciousness has required me to challenge beliefs that I have about myself, beliefs that I have about reality, and beliefs that I have about the way the world works. And that can be very destabilizing. You know, people like to talk about the ego as this negative thing, right? The ego is a personality structure that allows you to navigate in the world. It creates an understanding. It's a structure of and model of understanding about your personal self and how it relates to the world. If you destabilize it, it's scary as fuck, you know. And in order to move, and yes, there is vast, infinite expansiveness beyond the ego structure. There's so much beyond. You can't, in my opinion, you can't explore a relationship with mortality and death if you don't move beyond it. You can't explore you know, the nature of consciousness and reality itself without moving beyond your understanding or your ideas about yourself and the world. You can't fully embrace, basically, if you think you're right about something, you are closed off to information about anything that might prove you wrong, quote unquote. So as soon as you have a fixed identity or a fixed view of the world or a fixed whatever it is, you know, if you believe that you're right about something, then as soon as you say I'm right, then everything else becomes inaccessible to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And it goes back. Yeah, continue.
I was just going to say, so trying to have that expansiveness, or even exploring something as like, you know, even the idea that a dream could be more than just a dream. You know, if you're saying it's just a dream all the time because every time you dream you have a nightmare, but you know, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a lived experience and a visualized experience. And so to your nervous system, you know, let's take all the etheric stuff out of it. Let's, you know, if you have a dream, your nervous system still registers it as a real experience on a physical level. So when you're saying it's just a dream, you're not only invalidating the experience, but you're also invalidating whatever your nervous system just registered as a felt, genuine, real experience, right? For you to say that it's not just a dream, that there are consequences, even just in your nervous system, but there are emotional experiences that you have to process. I've had to process shame that I've felt from dreams, sadness. I've had dreams about deceased relatives that have brought up such intense cathartic release that I didn't get to process when they actually died. You know, I'd have conversations with dead relatives, and then I would wake up and I'd be bawling because I didn't even cry at their funeral, kind of thing. You know, but in order for you to say it's more than just a dream, it has to allow you to let go of this idea that you're right, that the way that you're structuring your reality, the personality structure and your ideas about the world, you have to let go of that to create some room for different ideas. And that's where hesitation has always come from me, even with the awareness of that ego structure, even with the awareness of those limitations. If you destabilize your reality, it's a scary thing. It's in place for a reason, but there's this idea that boundaries that you set to protect yourself can become, these walls that you set can become a prison as well. So that's just my take on that.
Yeah, and that's the overlapping theory behind it, is that, you know, Cordell and I give people permission to do these dives into their consciousness. We don't avoid the validation of whether it feels right or wrong. We just accept it for what it is, and we invite to face these with you know, with company, with reinforcement that it's okay. We are part of this collective. We all have a full spectrum of emotions to experience. And through that comes acceptance, I think. And I really like how you're talking about how certain dreams bring up certain emotions that you weren't able to process when it was happening in the waking state. And that Cordell could probably add to this, how dreams and creativity allow us to process emotions that we perhaps weren't willing to face on our own.
Yeah, completely. I love both those points that you guys have made here. You know, this notion of concern of stepping into an area that can't be validated, that can't be, yeah, this is right or not. Well, what is right? You know, we define a lot of what's truth or what's right on consensus reality, on these lived experiences that we can share and say, okay, well, yeah, I can't walk through this wall probably. Pretty material. Agree on that, yes or no? As soon as we start to get into the realm of subjective experience, I don't know what your dreams are like. I can't prove whether you did or didn't have a dream. Like you said, Anthony, it is destabilizing. It is stepping into a deeper water of there are no truths. There are just your experiences. To Greg's point, you know, I've had similar experiences to you, Anthony, where my dreams have been as profoundly healing as any experience I've had in waking life. I work with therapists, I do, you know, work with ayahuasca and other plant medicines, incredibly healing. And I've had dreams that have been as healing as any other experience I've had. One example is when I met Greg. I used to be an Ironman triathlete. I was playing in bands in Cambodia, jumping around stages. And then one night, overnight, I had a knee problem. I had 5 surgeries. At the end of that, I couldn't run. I still can't run to this date. I can't jump around. I lost a big part of my identity overnight, just removed. And that put me through grief. That put me through states of depression. And, you know, I was working with people to try and, you know, recreate myself, mourn this aspect of self that I had let go. And then one night I had a dream, and it was a dream of me running actually through the streets of Phnom Penh where Greg and I met in Cambodia. And I could feel my chest breathing as I ran, just heaving, felt my heart pumping out of my chest. I could just experience this again. And I woke up, my heart pounding, my chest heaving, sweating, and tears rolling down my face. And it truly allowed me to grieve, to have one last experience of running like this again. And immediately, my worldview had shifted. That experience had helped me process, helped me see things in a new way, honor and have gratitude for all of those experiences. And it was life-changing. So these are really, really important lived experiences despite, again, that they're not waking experiences. And that's a lot of why I'm doing this dream work, is to help people access these other experiences that can be so profound and so, growth oriented.
What's your favorite, both of you guys, what's your favorite or most profound dream that you've had recently?
Oof. Hi. Well, let's get into it. I've been dreaming a lot about whales and like orcas, grays, sperm whales, different scenarios, swimming with them. Some of them I was swimming with in a field in my old elementary school. I have a lot of dreams about my old elementary school, and I think it's the way I interpret it is a reminder of the foundation of your education, and where perhaps there are chinks in the system of our institutionalized educational system, where that's needing reparation, where that's needing a light shined in it. And the indigenous here on the West Coast believe that the whales, when they come into your dreams, they are messengers. They are extremely important and symbolic of the medicine you're needing in terms of dreams, looking into your dreams, looking into the investigation of your own psyche through a spiritual lens. And being here on the West Coast now for the past 7 years, I've experienced being close to orcas and just the feeling you get when you're around them. They're not like most other sentient beings. They're extremely what's the word? They're just mystical as fuck. Like, honestly, you can't get any more mystical than an orca. and it's almost something that words can't express. And that's why I think that's where dreams and creativity come in. They give us these modes of these lenses in which we can look through and express ourselves or feel a kind of emotion that we can't put to words, And someone who was really good at this, who I, wanted to make a point of mentioning in this talk, because if we didn't, why the hell are we here? Is Salvador Dali. And how much he has profoundly contributed and influenced the, not just the fine arts, but not just, the lucidity of dreaming, but how we can take symbolism from it and impregnate our art with it. And one of my favorite things to do with my partner Mary is we pull from the Salvador Dali tarot deck. This is a deck that he designed himself, which is really, really beautiful, and it's got all the major and minor arcana in there, and a beautiful book, and it's just like full of magic. And last night we pulled 4 cards. We pulled something to represent and share insight as to what our past was, the present, the future, and then kind of the resolve. And it was uncanny. It's like you can't write that shit, it's not like a kind of fortune teller who will say, well, yesterday you may have been feeling sad, tomorrow you will feel happy. It's not generic and broad. It's very honed in on who that person is and their journey, not just through the human experience, but through this individual perspective. And it was talking about it was talking about how the art of relationship lies with ferrying from shore to shore. And that's what Mary and I have been doing for the past year in our long distance relationship from Vancouver Island to Vancouver. And it's a really beautiful way. Like, I love Salvador Dali because he bridges the gap, right, if there is one, to this seemingly separate dimension of, his perspective and his dreaming experiences with, like, how we're gonna be influenced by it and how we're gonna perceive it. And void of being out of a museum or anything, like, Salvador Dali was a weirdo. He was a super weird guy to be around. And I just love the improvisation within dreams and in creativity, because they tend to start crossing over. And that's a really another cool thing about multidimensionalism, is that, like, where does improvisation come from? When we're soloing, Anthony and I have played in many bands before, and we've written a bunch of songs, and we tend to like write chord structures for each other and then give each other that nod to then solo over it. And I'm kind of questioning, like, where does improvisation come from? Where does that point between 0 and 1 lie in, okay, I need to make this decision right now. I'm not going to over intellectualize it. I'm not going to rationalize it. I'm just going to feel it. I'm just going to dig into my archive of colors, my palette, i.e., shapes on the guitar, on the fretboard, or relationships between notes. How am I going to make that into an improvised dance so that it expresses who I am at this specific moment in time? That, whether or not it's recorded, it's there, it happened, and the brain had a chance to just like light a few of the synapses up to be like, you know what, this is something that is fun and creative, and it's helping me process, and I'm turning off the rational side of it to not overthink, because I think we put ourselves into these modes of I don't know, thinking too hard,
Well, one thing you just said there too is, like, you turn off the rational mind, and the thread that I kind of saw along that whole that whole here's the thing. You use in dreams, in art, in music, there is a tendency for symbology to supersede the rational logical mind. And you have these things where, the symbology of the tarot deck, for example, allows you to scry into yourself in a deeper way than if you were trying to rationalize or intellectualize your own experience. By peeping into this symbology, whether that's in dreams, whether that is of a piece of artwork, whether that is of a feeling that's elicited through music. If you're sitting here describing your life, it's like, well, in my past, I was 7 years old and I liked peanut butter sandwiches. And then someone stole my peanut butter sandwich and I was sad. So now whenever I don't get to eat peanut butter sandwiches, I'm sad as an adult. It's like, that's a very intellectual thing. But if you're, the value of tarot isn't some, in my mind, it's not some mystical otherworldly force that's telling you your future. It's the power of symbology and interpretation of these symbols that allows you to supersede that logical linear thinking. When you're talking about having whales as this mystical sort of invitation to look at your life in a different, powerful way, that's a symbol of something that lies beyond what you would rationally, if you're like doing an inventory of your life, you're not going to think it's like, well, the whale in the dream told me that I should check my bank balance and start budgeting better. It's like you're going to look at it in a more symbolic and less logical way.
Oh, we lost to Greg.
We lost to Greg. He'll be back.
Just as Greg's coming back on, I'd love to riff on that, Anthony. I mean, there's so much of what Greg just said that there's so much to talk about there. The symbology piece is really important. It's kind of at the crux of dreaming. Dreams come and give us all these symbols in objects, symbols in characters, symbols in the scenes. And part of my belief is that everything in a dream is perfectly everything in a dream is completely there for you to play with. And as Greg was saying, oftentimes these symbols will give something that is inexpressible. It's why they're symbols. There's so much more loaded behind a symbol than can often be quickly grasped or spoken a bit about. And I think that's why a lot of these symbols come up for us. There's, a lot of belief, particularly in psychology, Freud and Jung and all these others who are like, okay, well, this is symbolic. Freud would say it's all, repressed sexual desires. We've kind of moved past Freud since then to, okay, yeah. There's a lot there that's in our subconscious mind. There's a lot that's been pushed down. Okay, well, why does it go into our subconscious mind? Well, we either suppress or repress or deny, or oftentimes we're overwhelmed. We don't know how to process a situation or something that comes into our experience. And so we shove it down there. And then in dreams, it projects out. it comes out into light. And as we start to play with these symbols, as we start to, whether it's tarot cards or, you know, some serendipitous, synchronous, something that comes into our waking life, this is all fodder for us to explore deeper. And so when these dreams come up and give us these great symbols, okay, how do we play with this? How does a whale, this big, powerful beast, come into our dreams? What does that mean for us? What's there for us? Even just playing with powerful emotions, even playing with, you know, West Coast ancestral ideas of the grandfathers and the spirits, that what's there for us as we start to think about those things. It gives us more perspectives, it gives us more possibilities to play with. And when we have more possibilities, ultimately that gives us more choice. And then so rather than being in our habitual patterns and our habitual perspectives and ways of thinking, dreams or tarot cards, all of this stirs something up in us to look at things in an unhabitual way, to look at things differently. And again, that gives us more choices as to how do we want to step into life. It's a beautiful little, these are beautiful little muses that come continuously to us.
Yeah, I remember when Anthony and I were living together, you know, we were going nuts on the rocks and gems collection. And I just remember like asking Anthony, I was like, why are we collecting so many rocks, man? Like, we're just collecting these colorful rocks now. And he's like, well, they're tools. These are valuable tools that hold teachings and lessons and reminders. You know, we carry rose quartz in our pockets to remind ourselves of the innate love that we have to give and receive. We hold labradorite in our hands and meditate with it to understand that, you know, if we're going to align all our chakras, the iridescence in the labradorite is there to remind us that it holds that same kind of energy and is a reminder for us to carry on with us and in a beautiful way too. So,
and I'm often more inclined to take that approach when it comes to things like crystals or things that of a spiritual nature that are often ascribed to as this absolutely, you know, when people, I know a lot of friends who work with crystals and they work with it in a literal sense where they're like, oh, the crystal holds a subtle vibration and it's going to manipulate the reality that you're experiencing in this particular way. And that's cool if that's the experience that you want to create for yourself. That's amazing. For me, I've always found this idea of symbology and using these things as tools for our own consciousness, whether or not we understand the subtle vibrational mechanics behind it. I'm always more inclined to take a more grounded agnostic approach and relate it more to my direct experience. So it's like if I'm holding a piece of citrine, and people have talked about citrine as, you know, it's this golden yellow with some translucent, it's like it feels abundant to me because societal conditioning has made me associate these bright yellows with the colors of gold. And so there's this sense of abundance associated with it. So it's like, okay, I'm reminded that like I can create, I'm not using it as a crutch. It's like, I'm going to put this yellow rock in my pocket and then I'm going to get rich. But it's this reminder of the energy of abundance, right? And this symbology. I actually had a really cool dream about whales too. I just remembered, since we were talking about all this symbology, I had this dream maybe like 2 years ago where, you know, I've lived in the mountains since about 2014 in and out, either by the mountains or by the ocean in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I had this dream where I was in the mountains, I was by a cabin, and on the rocks outside of this house that I was staying at, there was a massive bear who had this commanding presence, and it was just so powerful, and it was kind of lumbering towards me. And I remember feeling this caution, this hesitation, and this reverence for the power that this bear had. And at the same time, around the bear, there was this fox that was running and jumping on all over the rocks, and it was able to navigate through this rocky, unstable terrain. And I was thinking, wow, these two animals really, like, I got to get back in the house because I'm safest in the house right now. These animals command this space. This is their habitat. I got to get back in the house. So I go in the house and I go upstairs and I'm kind of looking down I'm watching the bear and the fox kind of do their thing. But then I look up in the sky and there's this orca whale flying towards the window that I'm looking out of. And I'm like, oh shit, this is dream logic, right? This is, oh, the orca jumped too high out of the water. It's coming towards my house now. So I move out of the way of the window and this orca comes crashing through the window and there's this big explosion. And I'm just like looking at this orca whale head is just looking here and its eye just kind of looks up at me and it sort of grunts. And same thing, I can tell how powerful it is, but in this environment, its power is inert. It has no power where it is stuck in a window in my mountain cabin house, right? But in my but I remember waking up and it was like, it wasn't for a few weeks that I kept thinking about that dream. I was like, what the fuck was that dream all about? And I had recently been in a position where I was trying to take on a role that did not fit my natural talents. Like there are things that I'm very naturally good at, that I'm very called to, that I'm very pulled to. And those things I very, very much excel at. I can serve people in a powerful way. And I was trying to take on this role that just wasn't me. And I remember thinking about this whale stuck in this window. I was like, I kind of feel like that whale stuck in the window. As in, like, if you put me in the water, I'm powerful. Like I am a predator. I am like a force to be reckoned with. Like I'm top of the food chain, but put me inside of a window on the land, and I am a useless orca. I'll tell you that much, right? Like these massive, powerful creatures, these basic giant behemoths that are essentially swimming forces of like they're big yin yang symbols going around hunting down everything in their sight. But if you put them on land, they're totally useless. Their power is completely gone. And that was the sort of symbology. It was like the bear on the land was this powerful force, and it was in its element, and it was powerful in that way. And then the fox also was in its element in a different way because it was nimble. It was all over the place. But then you put that orca whale in that environment, and it's useless. And that, in my head, it was like, wow. This is this whole thing where it's like there are environments and there are roles and there are situations that are meant for you, where you can express your power, you can express yourself in the most powerful, profound way possible. And that, for me, that was probably the most profound, like, symbolic dream that I've ever had.
Beautiful. I love that interpretation. I love that articulation. You know, a lot of what I'll do with my dream practices when I have big questions in my life, you know, about a job, a relationship, should I do this, should I do that? I'll put it to my dreams. You know, I believe my subconscious mind, or some believe that we tap into the collective unconscious when we go into dream time. I want to put my biggest questions to what I think is my most profound thinking experience. And so when I do that, I'll incubate, I'll set intentions to answer or ask these types of big questions. And, you know, a really simple practice that's been profound for me has been to get students to ask a question that's yes or no. So, should I take this new role on? If yes, show me lots of green imagery, green as in go. If no, show me lots of red imagery as in stop. And just think about that intention. Think about that question. Hold that question in your mind as you go to sleep. Just hold the intention. And more often than not, it doesn't always work the first night, but if it's a big question, you might be thinking about it several nights in a row before you go to bed. Take that intention in with you and see what your dreams have to show you. Does it show you that you're going to be a fish out of the water? Does it show you that you're going to be nimble and being able to take on anything that comes your way as you bounce from rock to rock? These types of things ultimately turn into a gut check. As Greg was saying earlier, all these practices and processes, if we get better and better at checking in with our intuition, our inner guidance system, you'll know, okay, I might have gotten green all night long, and then you feel into that. Sometimes, yeah, that feels really good. Sometimes, even if it's been green all night, you check into it, you're like, it still doesn't feel right. Well, that's important too. So all of this can be such useful fodder for us in how we navigate life.
Amazing. Greg, how's your connection doing right now? We're
We're
having some
good.
connection issues.
I'm
Good.
connected. I feel connected to you.
That's super cool. So guys, in terms of you both teach
Yeah, this has been.
very. Oh, uh-oh. I feel very connected to you too, but I don't think your internet's very connected to me right now. There's I have to close up soon because I have another call, unfortunately, at 1:30. But I want to close off because both of you guys teach really, really profound and, in my mind, unique things that people don't often talk about, or even even in the personal development sphere, there are hot topics and there are things that you kind of see that are almost cliche. And I think you guys transcend every self-development or personal development cliche. So if you're going to leave someone who is completely new to this work with your favorite practice or a great beginner practice or something that people could start doing, either every day or every week or whatever to start expanding their consciousness through your guidance, what would you suggest to them?
I guess I'll begin. When you are having trouble with making a decision, and it's a big life decision, you feel like that it's one that either keeps coming up, you've been putting it on the back burner, or you're wondering, how do I create more harmony in this relationship, or how do I get past this emotional or creative block? There isn't one solution. There isn't one pill that solves everything. There isn't one art practice. There isn't. I don't want to speak for myself. There hasn't been one dream that has told me, okay, this is what life is about. This is how I solve the problem. But what I would encourage you to do is get as many colors as you can, because colors, being the frequency of and the full spectrum of our emotion, of light, of everything, draw your soul right then, right there. Draw your soul without trying to rationalize the experience, without thinking, well, what the fuck does a soul look like? Just put anything to paper. I've actually had a friend do this in VR recently. He made a 3-dimensional soul. It was heavy, but do it and enjoy the process, understanding that every gesture, every characteristic, everything that you're going to be putting into it has no wrong or right. There's no wrong or right way for it to be, to enjoy the process, rather. When you're done, be present with the soul. You're now holding your soul. You're physically holding your soul from you to you. The original you is in your hands. A very unique experience. Not many people can say they held their soul before. Feel? Is it heavy? Is it sharp? Is it fragile? Is it what are the, then we start to put these material kind of properties to it, but ask yourself how it feels and try to find the symbolism within it. It takes practice. You can also do this with someone else and exchange it, someone you trust, someone you love, someone who is willing to go there with you, and exchange souls and ask them what they see, or ask yourself what you see in theirs. Because we're all mirroring, we're all reflecting our experiences. We're all trying to make sense of this dance, this human dance that we're performing every single day and night. And so that experience in and of itself can provide some really profound insight as to where you are, where you've been, and perhaps where you're headed. And I've had some clients have some really, really big decisions come from that experience. They're like, wow, I never really thought of that. Okay. And they've either left a relationship, or they've moved places, or they've changed jobs. And these are big life moves, So that's one. Draw your soul.
Well, I love that, Greg. I'm definitely going to try that. I'm going to get a big piece of paper and some finger paints here and just play with that. That's incredible.
Yeah, get Tura to draw your soul. It's a beautiful, intelligent little 2.5-year-old.
Sounds like a great way to spend my afternoon. I would add a practice here, which kind of goes to the core of everything that I teach in dream work, which is if you want to have an active dream life, the number one, only most important tool is to have a dream journal. Obviously, that's to catch anything you can. Dreams are very slippery, they're ephemeral, they slip from the mind. As soon as you wake up, to catch your dreams. But it goes far beyond just remembering dreams. Really, what a dream journal allows you to do is create a tether, create a connecting link between your waking life and your dreaming life. Before you go to bed, set an intention. Okay, questions I want to dream about, big questions I'm pondering in life, and it tethers your waking day into your night and your night into your day. And why that's really important is once you start to connect your dreams to your day waking life, you start to notice these symbols and synchronicities that start coming up in your life. Oh, there was a blue heron in my dream, and when I saw a heron as I crossed by the coast today, it sparked all of these memories. You start to be able to read some of the synchronicities of life going on. You start to connect to these emotional experiences, daytime, nighttime, and your world becomes so much more whole. You're starting to tether these two parts and two aspects of your consciousness together. And as Greg said earlier, you start to become multidimensional or multi-conscious. And that's, I think, really, really important for all of us. I think as we start to embrace the wholeness of who we are, and we are all multi-conscious beings, just to start framing yourself as this multi-conscious being, that starts to expand your whole horizon, your whole aspect of self. And I think for a lot of the challenges that we're all facing in day-to-day life and that our world are facing, being a little less material, embracing some of our ephemeral, spiritual, other consciousness is a big part or a big start to some of the solutions that are going to be required of us.
Nice.
And just one last note too, I think that something that's overlapping with Cordell and I in our practices is that we're encouraging people to take bold and courageous leaps into the unknown, which is scary. We get it. We're doing it as well, and we're here to support you where we can, in the sense of shaking ourselves out of what we feel life is and what it could be, because there's a lot of people who are settling for a lot less than what they deserve, than what their higher selves are capable of, and for what their greatest potential can share with the rest of the world.
Super cool. Super cool, guys.
Love it.
That's amazing. Well, guys, first of all, Cordell, it was the first time chatting with you, and I want to say it was like super, super nice getting to know you and your work a little bit. I'd love to continue having chats with you and connect with you at another time as well. This was super fun. Sorry about the tech issues at the beginning on No Filter, but as soon as that's up and going again, maybe we can try round 2 once we know what the tech issues are. In the meantime, I'm going to upload this video to YouTube so that people can watch it, and if they have any questions, I know that Greg, your Instagram is intuitive.grego, like Grego. And Cordell, you are Cordell.Jacks.
Correct.
Awesome. So if you guys want to find, is there any other place that people can go if they want to find your work?
Yeah, for me, my website is CordellJacks.com. And otherwise on Facebook as well, just look me up, you'll be able to find me. Thanks so much, Anthony. It was great to meet you as well. And for Grego.
Awesome, guys.
Yeah, and for me, it's if you just Google The Awakened Creative and my name, Greg Marino, you should find the links to all my programs there.
That's amazing. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for having the chat. I'll shoot you guys a message when this is up on YouTube, and I can't wait for the next chat.